This article is the second part of a longer research regarding an eventual existence of a metric principle in Old Byzantine chant consisting in 4-meter phrases and the possible implications of it in the deciphering of the logic of exegesis. In the first part, published in Analele Putnei, the last volume, I have been briefly presented some music theories perspective on the existence of a compositional principle called by Hugo Riemann, one of the founders of modern musicology, Vierge Bigheit, 4-foot metrical verse. He claimed for it an almost universal validity throughout the entire history of music. We'll resume here briefly the main arguments regarding this metrical principle, well known by European preclassical and classical composers, as can be observed from their works, and verify if it might be applied in Old Byzantine church chant. For a more efficient and faster presentation, I want to ask you, when there are scores reproduced as exemplification, to concentrate on them and not on the explanatory text, which I will read entirely. We'll start with the motto, thou hast ordered all things in measure and number and weight, is from Solomon 11:20. So phrasing is the most remarkable and least noticed aspect of musical language. Phrasing refers to the separation of melody into its constituent phrases. They are just quotes. I will not comment them because I already did that in the first part of this article. Some of the chief ways in which performers and consequently listeners may make sense of a flux of otherwise undifferentiated sound and convert clock time into musical time. And the earliest appearance of phrasing marks is Representatione di Anima e di Corpo by Emilio Cavalieri in 1600. There is a work, a treatise named The Art of Strict Metrical Composition, written by a disciple of Johann Sebastian Bach, who was also an important music theorist on the 18th century. His rhythmic theory, known later as Accenten theory, lays on the base of the modern system. He demonstrates that the necessity for a regular measured melody in analogy with dance. If a precise uniformity is observed in the steps and small movements, this results in the measured work which we call dance, and this is precisely analog to measured melody. And a very important quote from him: the best melodies are always those whose phrases have 4 measures. The theory of a universal phrase division in 4 meters, presented here in just few quotes. Hugo Riemann, one of the main founders of modern musicology, considered the 4-foot verse as an universal principle. It is defined as the property of musical and poetic rhythm, as seen by certain theorists, that make most phrases and verses divide naturally into 4 equal or equivalent parts in Grove Music Online. Riemann's system is the final stage of an era in the history of music theory that wiped out music regardless of genre and medium as the hierarchical organization of phrases prototypically 4 measure long. Was a theorist, Waldbauer, who wrote a biography, as much as I know, regarding the activity of Riemann. And the music of the era from 1600 to 1800 often shows a regular phrase structure in units of 4 measures. Harvard Music Dictionary. A lot of researchers from the ethnomusicology area discovered that it is a universal pattern of a trochaic tetrameter and of a common time meter. Constantin Brăiloiu, one of the forefathers of ethnomusicology, wrote a lot of articles regarding this subject, and also an important work named Le Rhythm Enfantin in 1956, from where I quote, "Children rhythms remain unchanged across all Europe, and the same stays true also with the Kabyles, the Tuaregs, the black people of Senegal, Doheny, and Sudan, with the indigenous people of Taiwan." And a definition from Princeton Encyclopedia for Poetry and Poetics: trochaic meters are quite common in many songs, chants, and nursery rhythms, rhymes and idioms, formulaic expressions, proverbs, riddles, slogans, jingles, and college cheers, and in much popular and folk verse. Here it is a grid analysis of children usual verse in trochaic tetrameter and common time measure. From the scansion can be observed the 4 accents to principal, dividing the verse into halves verses, and 2 weaker accents, dividing the half verses into metric feet. The trochaic tetrameter, the term is a Greek one. Troche means running, is synonym with chore, belonging to the dance. It seems to maintain close ties with popular speech and song. It's rare in a literary verse, but common in popular. In music, trochaic rhythm is structural since a stress begins every bar. Presumably, the use of trochaic meters for text simplifies the fitting of the words to music. So here, there is a tetrameter chant, the prototype of all church chants, the Song of Moses, which at origin was a dance. And we know that any dance implies a metrical structure, a fixed metrical structure. The incipit of the refrain do fit tetramatically, mostly in catalectic forms. Some verses start with an anacrusis, green, colored here in green, written by us as in a common time meter. This meter is very specific to close circle dances, as seems to be the iconographic representation of Miriam and the Israelite woman. So here is a choros, a dance represented. The simplest form of a period with its structural parts, as anybody knows, but from here, of course, you know a lot of things I'm saying, but I just want a little recapitulation until we'll go to the Byzantine phrases, music phrases. It is an anacrusic type of a phrase. The sections, the phrases, and the periods begin on upbeat, a situation frequently encountered in church chant too. And the phrase is constituted in general by 2 motives with 2 principal accents. 2 or more phrases form a period, from a Romanian dictionary of music. A psalm verse in Gregorian melismatic chant is divided also in 4 sections, and not just in melismatic chant. So the formula used for the tracts and cantus, like those of the invitatory, articulates more divisions of the psalm verse than those used in simple psalmody. The major division is into hemistichs, but each hemistich is further divided. The old Byzantine melody was composed in common time meter, and this might be very surprising for someone. But we have some quotes here from Chrysanthos of Maditos, from his Theoreticon Mega, Great Theory of Music, who says, from the emphasis, it seems that the chironomia had the genius of dactylic rhythm and was executed on the double proceleusmatic foot, or else the meter 4, which means 4/4 measure. Measured is called the melos, whose melodic neumes are separated by vertical lines that enclose melodic fragments of as many chroni as the meter contains. Another one, if the old mele have an orderly rhythmic motion and fit better than the new mele in the meters, it is because of the chironomia and the rhythm that were known to the creator of those mele. And the last one, the melopeos should construct the rhythms are meter clearly, easily divisible, and with orderly progress. Indeed, the only way that human beings may in any way be affected by music is by comprehending these mechanisms. So all these quotes are from Chrysanthos. I choose also a quote to define the emphasis. Emphasis is when the melodic length of a syllable of a significant word starts and ends together with the meter. For example, in tases perinas, the syllables ki and ri of the word Kyrie receive a melodic length. This length is worth 4 chroni. If the meter in which I divide the entire troparion is of 4 chroni as well, then I obey the emphasis. If not, I harm it. Observation, the keywords regarding the theme of this article are the meter in which I divide the entire troparion. From here too, it can be concluded that Chrysanthos perceived the troparion or chant as being metrical ordered, in this case in common time meter. There are articulation marks for any phrases in classical music. Phrasing and articulation are used to describe clear and meaningful rendition of music, comparable to an intelligent reading of poetry. Harvard Music Dictionary. Definition, articulation means subdivision of a phrase into smaller units. 2 motives articulated with 2 principal accents form usually a phrase, and since earliest notation system, rest and fermatas were used as a means of notating articulation. So I put the accent here on these 2 articulation marks, accents, prosodical or musical, and also rest and fermatas. So phrasing marks in hymnological genre. Usually here too, the phrases are divided in 2 sections of 2 meters each. See example below. The beginning of sections are usually accentuated prosodically or musically, syllables ki and la and the psiphiston in this example. So himati, tha, la, sis. Every meter starts with a new syllable. Usually there are 2 equal syllables lasting half note in each meter. The hidden rest issue. Our definition to this phenomenon. A pause, silence, usually of a half note at the end of phrases or sections, which is not written in the neumatic score, but is inherent for the metrical continuity. Exemplification. Here, phrase 1 and phrase 3 are typical, lasting 4 meters each. Phrase 2 is shorter with a half note. Phrase 3 cannot start right after because 1, the only accented syllable, ok and t, will fall on the 3rd beat weaker. And 2, same thing will happen with varia, the only accented note in the whole phrase 3. Hidden rest in a papadic phrase. Here is a note. We shortened the duration of all papadic transnotation by 2 times to have a better perception of the 4 meter phrases. So all our exemplification from papadic genre will be, all the exegesis will be reduced 2 times. All the duration will be shortened 2 times. Explanation to this hidden rest. Section 1 lasts 1 meter and 3 beats. Section 2 cannot start right after because its main accent, varia, together with the only new syllable ri, will move from the main accent beat of the fourth meter to the fourth beat of the third meter, the weakest, which ruins completely the melodic sense. So it's not possible when we have just one accent in the whole section here to put it in the fourth beat of a meter. There are other exceptions for, let's say, possible normative four meter phrases. They are hypermetric phrases. The term is taken from poetry, which means beyond the measure. Philip Kinberger writes about this thing. A phrase of 4 measures can be transformed to rhythmic units of 5 measures by extension of certain principal notes that are too big to be given a special emphasis. The ear is not only not offended by it, but the excessive length of such a phrase often has great impact. Thus, the 4-measure phrase can be changed into the 5-measure phrase, which is considered only as 4-measure. So here in this example, in phrase 1, section 1 lasts 2 meters and section 2 lasts 3 meters, ending with martyria. This means the whole phrase has 5 meters. The last one could be considered as a little coda or codetta, if you want. Phrase 2 starts with an upbeat of 2 time units and lasts, as usual, 4 meters, ending with martyria. So, in this case, and the similar ones, we named the 5-meter phrase hypermetric. Hypometric phrases. Again, the term is taken from poetry, means less than a measure. So this kind of phrases, exceptional phrases, we can call them, are frequently found in poetry. So explain the 4-meter phrases. Groove Music Online mentioned. For bird music, they, certain theorists, have vived an 8-bar segment of the often called the period of 2 4-bar segments, or as the normal metrical length, an irregular period of say 7 or 9 bars as a contraction of expansion of the normal length, which means a period formed by 2 phrases, 7 or 9 meters means a period of 2 phrases. The first of 4 respective 3 meters and the second of 4 respective 5 meters. So here is referred this exception from the rule. Explanation for this exemplification. Phrase 1 lasts 3 meters, ending with a martyria, which it stays always at the end of phrases and sections. So the upbeat of the phrase 2 starts on the beginning of the 4th meter. We named the 3-meter phrase in this case, and similar ones hypometric. And here we formulate some general issue here in Byzantine music. The lack of a proper understanding of the phrase structure, especially the anacrusis delimitation and hidden rest interpolations, might be the main motivation or opinion for the absence of a constant metrical perception in the Old Byzantine chant. We'll go now to analyze different phrases, typical and atypical. First, from hymnologic genre, Great Saturday Canon, first ode, plagel of the 2nd mode. Phrase 1 is composed from section 1 and section 2, articulation marks, stressed syllable, key, and la, and the psiphistone. Phrase 2 is has an upbeat, and section 1 hypermetric, and section 2 anticipated, starts a little earlier than usual. Then usually is on the 3rd meter, and has also a hidden rest, notated with X always in these examples. Articulation marks stress syllables cri and pa. So anticipation occur when a phrase or section without an anacrusis starts earlier. Phrase 3 has an upbeat and section 1 and section 2 normal. Articulation mars, stressed syllable oc, varia martiria. For fourth phrase, upbeat plus section 1. Articulation, this phrase has just one section. Articulation mars, stressed syllable gi, varia, and the hidden rest. So in all these phrases, we have two hidden rests, since in 8 phrases, there are 2 hidden rests. The fifth phrase is also atypical. Section 1 anticipated and hypermetric, and section 2 articulation has and section 2 articulation mars, stress syllable ton, antihenoma, and martiria. Sixth phrase, upbeat plus section 1 and section 2, articulation mars, stress syllable mis and varia. And the last two, the seventh one, upbeat of 2 time units is here on the previous page, you could see it. And section 1, hypermetrical, articulation mars, stress syllable re. For 8th phrase, upbeat of 5 time units, and section 1 plus section 2, articulation mars, stress syllable gar, and 2 varias. This dividing of phrase and this meter principle for phrases of 4 meter can help in some ways to exegesis. We will give an example here, because it's the first measure from the previous chant, because both chants versions of Balasios the priest and Peter Peloponnesius are syllabic and have almost identical syllable pitch, even if more ornamentated in the second case, can be concluded that the last one is in fact an exegesis of the first. And this is signaled by Ioannis Arvanitis in the article, the Hymnologion by Balasius the priest. I inserted here the ornaments, so they are the same notes with the original chant. In classical music theory, these are called simple inferior mordent, and in this case, a long superior appoggiatura. The same phrase with complete transnotation of the Balasios version. Explanation: if we agree that Peloponnesius version is the exegesis of Balasios version, then we can surely write the basic duration of the last 1 syllables as half notes, as in the exegesis. Then the other durations can be deduced on this base. The complete transnotation should not be confused with the proper exegesis, which is usually melismatic, more or less. So what we transnotate there is not the entire melos, it's just a transnotation with durations, with rhythm. So we used for the complete transnotation the method of short exegesis presented by Mr. Ioannis Arvanitis. Sometimes there is almost not any difference between the notes of the chironomia and those from the exegesis, as is the case with the antikenoma from phrase 6, section 1, or piesma from phrase 7. And sometimes the exegesis is more analytical, as in phrase 8, section 2, the psiphiston. From this diversity of exegetic modes, one on the same chironomia, if can be concluded that it can be concluded that there is a kind of freedom for their interpreter, as in Chrysantic notation too, where the same aphones signs have different variants of interpretation. And the third note, the complexity of rhythm and meter is extraordinary due to the intricate patterns of accent, prosodical, metrical, and rhythmical. Each musical phrase is different, avoiding any trace of monotony. Still, the sense of order and proportion is conferred by the perfect metrical cycles of 4 meters, which encircle each verse. We'll go now to the Papadic phrases, and I quoted again Kernberger. Large 4 to 4 time is extremely weighty tempo and execution, and because of its emphatic nature, is suited primarily to church piece. We choose our exemplification from firstly from Sunday Communion verse of the first mode by Manuel Chrysafes from 15th century. Phrase 1 is hypometric, has 3 meters, articulation mark, martyria. Phrase 2 has 4 meters. I notated with a minus when the last meter of a phrase or section is incomplete. So phrase 2 has 4 meters, upbeat, 4 time units, section 1 2 meters, section 2 2 meters, articulation marks, stressed syllable ni, martyria, hidden rest. Phrase 3 5 meters, incomplete, upbeat of 2 time units, section 1 2 meters, section 2 3 meters, articulation marks, stressed syllable 2 and martyria. Phrase 4 5 meters, section 1 of 2 meters, section 2 of 3 meters, articulation marks, hidden rest, and martyria. Almost all the phrases end with a martyria, which is a distinct mark, articulation mark in Papadic genre. In Papadic exegesis too, there are hidden rests, noted also here with X, of usually 2 time units. Some of them are right after the martyria, others on the end of a section. For example, phrase 4, section 1. Yet they are rarely encountered. Here just 2 in 9 phrases. These phrases too, as in the etymological ones, fit in 4 meter cycles, with the observation that in this case, the hypermetrical phrases of 5 meters are encountered more frequently. For example, phrase 3, phrase 4, and phrase 9. Yet these phrases are considered by old theorists, as seen before, as enlarged 4 meter phrases. Let's continue with the same Kinonikon. Phrase 5 is also hypometric. Articulation marks, I don't see here, because anyway, I'll go to the phrase 6, 4 meter, upbeat 6 time units, section 1 2 meters, section 2 2 meters. Articulation marks, petas tipsifiston martyria. Phrase 7, 4 meters, upbeat of 2 time units, section 1 of 2 meters, section 2 2 meters, articulation marks, psifiston and martyria. Phrase 8, 4 meters, section 1 2 meters, section 2 2 meters, articulation marks, psifiston. Phrase 9, 5 meters, section 1 2 meters, section 2 3 meters, articulation marks, 3 syllables, ton, varia and martyria. So 2 or more phrases, as we know from classical music theory, form periods. The text of a period form a syntactical unit. So phrase 1 and plus phrase 2 contains the word enite. Phrase 3, phrase 4 and phrase 5 contains the word ton kyrion. So for phrase 6, phrase 7, phrase 8, and phrase 9, ek ton uranon. Altogether, totalize 3 periods of 9 phrases. Numbers which have a symbolic connotation, the Holy Trinity and 9 choirs of angels and others too. Pitch transnotation of the same or of the first two phrases. As in the Ierodiaconul Chant, the structural notes are seems to be those written in the original score. So they should be identified in the exegesis to make the distinction between them and the ornamental notes. The Chronos Protos is here the 8th note, so a meter has 8 time units and not 4, as in the Ierodiaconul Chant. This means a certain dynamization of the tempo, which cannot be too slow because the structural notes and chironomical formulas will not be comprehensible. More than that, if the church chant should imitate the angelic chorus, then it should preserve a dynamic ethos. And the third note, it can be observed that Chrysanthos of Maditos affirmation, the chironomia is executed on the meter 4. This affirmation is confirmed here. The chironomical formulas can be counted in meters. For example, dipli plus ligisma lasts 2 meters, petasti and psiphiston 1 meter, strangismata has 4 meters. 2. In this case, we have enough information to give some durations of the original notes. So we transnotated completely the previous phrase. Again, this is not the melos, it's just a durational transnotation, a complete transnotation, if you want. If exegesis means ornamental structural notes, and if the 4-meter phrase theory is functional in Papadic, then the duration of the structural notes can be precisely calculated, which means that it is possible to have complete transnotation here too. The logic of giving durations to the chironomical formula stays in the precise knowledge of the meter duration. If I have 1 neuma in a whole meter, for example, it's very sure that neuma lasts a whole note. Yet, what happens when there are more neumes? In this case, we should remember that chironomias are ornamental formulas which might be interpreted in different ways. So we can choose, in my opinion, the most suited durations for the best melodic shape, being aware of the Arvanitis method of short exegesis and also of the 4-meter structure of phrases. For example, in the petasti and psiphiston formula, zo and ke might be also of equal durations of half notes, but the exegesis seems to give a longer duration to the first note, so it may be logical to translate them consequently. Dipli plus ligisma can be interpreted to last 2 meters from the exegesis because the remaining ison can last maximum 1 meter, and together with petasti and psiphiston formula, which lasts surely 1 meter, as is deduced from the structural notes of the exegesis. In strangismata case, there seems that the second on both varias is shorter than first, as can be seen in exegesis. But is there any possibility to have them both equal? So we'll add to this exegesis of Hormuzius now another exegesis from Kievan manuscripts discovered by Professor Ignatenko, and we must watch them simultaneously right now, which is more difficult, but this is how it is. So there is another exegesis to this chant in Kievan notation from the end of the 16th century manuscripts. We placed it above the first for an easier comparison. The first phrase looks that it is shortened on half than the first, so the first ison lasts just a half note, and the dipli plus ligisma just 1 meter instead of 2 meters. But after this, both exegesises go quite symmetrically. It seems that Hormuzius' interpretation of this formula is more correct because dipli usually is transnotated in Kievan notation in 1 meter, as we will see in another example. But here might be counted also the ligisma, which doubles the initial duration. Petastie and psifiston get here equal preponderance. That means they could also be transnotated with half notes. The two varias from Strangismata 2 are composed here from two equal notes, as I already written. Which version is correct? Both, in our opinion, depending on the interpreter's will. Now, pneumatic notation is not as strict as staff notation. The interpreter has more freedom and can be more creative. He is more free to interpret the hieronomic formula according to his vision, of course, respecting the basic principles as in any other form of church art. And that is the reason we dare to write a complete transnotation to the structural notes without the fear of being wrong. Note 2, the chronos protos of the Kievan notation exegesis is the fourth note, which means basically two notes for one neuma, which means, at least in this case, short exegesis in papadic genre. The next phrases, also with Kievan notation, the next two phrases with Kievan notation exegesis. The home alone lasts 2 meters and is quite similar interpreted in both versions. We choose equal duration for meter 1 neume because Hurmuzio's version, which here seems to be closer, give them almost equal preponderance. The Anabasis 2 meters, which has 2 meters, is almost note per note interpreted in Kievan notation, which makes the complete transnotation easier. Phrase 3 is in both exegesis hypermetrical. Parakalesma has 2 meters in both interpretations, that of Hurmuzio's having a hidden rest. This is another proof that there exists such an issue in Chrysantic exegesis. In Kievan exegesis, Parakalesma is noted quite vaguely, yet keeping just its ambitus with a roughly shape. It is quite unusual to have in the exegesis lesser notes than in the original notation. A possible explanation may refer to the skill of the musicians involved in Kievan transnotation. In our opinion, this kind of vague transnotation shows that the transmission of the chant has been made orally, at least in some cases. The psalms sung and the Ruthenian pevets notated, in which case the precision of the exegesis depends on both musicians' skill. If the Kievan transnotation would be made by the same person, it is hard to believe that he didn't notate it at least as many notes were in the original score. The Tromikon has 2 meters, short exegesis in Kievan notation, and more analytical in that of Hurmuzio's, and is more analytical here. The same thing happens with the Petastie, which lasts 1 meter. The phrase in both exegesis is hypermetrical. Observation: the simple hieronomical formulas last usually 2 meters. The neumes without hieronomy last 1 meter, and the large hieronomical formulas 4 meters. Let's go to another papadic chant, this time only with Kievan notation. This is the Herovic song Paleon, which was presented earlier by Professor Ignatenko too, in the second mode. So, as can be observed here also, it can fit perfectly in 4-meter phrases. The short exegesis for papadic genre in Kievan notation can be found in other cases too. Here it is a cherubic song on plagal of the second mode, which appears frequently in Putna's Antologias and also in Kievan notation manuscripts. It was discovered by Elena Tonceva almost 50 years ago in an Irmologion of Maniava generical entitled Bulgarian chant. The only other manuscripts in which we could find it was EBE 928, written in Serbia to Maiteice Monastery by Hieromonk Isaia the Serb. It is one of the simplest melody for a cherubic song, possible a transcription of an oral transmitted version. We prefer to not write the accidentals because it was found transnotated in different modes in Ruthenian manuscripts. Here too, one can notice the perfect synchronization between the chironomical formulas and meter, and also the perfect fitting of the melody in 4-meter phrases. All the chironomias in these examples, syndiasmos, varia oxia, anatrihisma, stranghismata, omalon, and anavasma. No. Sorry, my Greek is awful. Last 2 meters, omalon and anavasma have quite similar exegesis with those from the communion chant of Manuel Chrysafis from previous example. Yet here anavasma is just transnotated without any ornaments. Deeply has here 1 meter too, as in the previous Kievan transnotation. The only major difference is with stranghismata. This one is interpreted on 2 meters, the previous one on 4 meters. Should be different versions of stranghismata. We give here another example from Anthimos Lavriotis, Heroic Song, the 4th mode. Again in Kievan notation, or again, we offered here a complete transnotation, 4-meter phrases. Here too, we deal with a short exegesis in general, but in some cases a little more analytical than previous examples. For example, the omalon has previous examples 2 meters, but the 2nd meter has more ornamental notes. Anavasma has again 2 meters, but is interpreted more analytical than previous examples. Psiphiston has 1 meter and the same short exegesis as the before, or as that from before. Syndiasmos, varia oxia, last here just 1 meter. In previous example had 2 meters. Stranghismata has also just 1 meter, but has a different shape than the previous ones. So in conclusion, of course, we cannot make final conclusions regarding the precise duration of some chironomical formulas just from these few examples. Still, they are both exegeses confirm what Chrysanthos of Maritos wrote, that chironomia was executed in meter 4. All the examples from above last 1 meter, 2 meter, or 4 meters, which constitute a good argument, in our opinion, for this assertion. For a general image regarding their duration and also their exegesis, could be a good idea that all exegetical analyses made until now, which implies the superposition of the Middle Byzantine notated chants over their exegesis to be electronical indexed, so index from indexed. When someone searches one specific formula, to have instant access of all places where it appears. And also all the articles on the subject would be digitally centralized to be accessible to anybody interested. The conclusion of this short investigation regarding the 4-meter phrases in hymnological and papadic chants seems to favor the assertion that there are indeed a lot of phrases structured in this way. That includes the hypermetrical ones of 5 meters and hypometrical of 3 meters, in which case the upbeat of the next phrase will complete the 4th meter. Of course, this metrical principle need to be verified in much more hypostases, analyzing much more chants. But if it will be confirmed, then it can constitute a key for deciphering the compositional laws inherent to the old Byzantine chants and to understand better the principles of exegesis. Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear Father Avram, and congratulations for this deep digging investigation you did in different chants. Are there any questions or any comments on this? It's Mr. Kyriakos Tsouramanis who wrote for me here something for you, Father Avram, and he says that it's very important, Father Avram, what you are presenting here with the 4 meters in different genres of melopea, of composition, because I found this rhythmical structure very important also for my own attempts for exegesis. I would like to ask you, Father Avraam, he asked Mr. Tsuramanis, whether you have comprised in your research also melodies which have not been yet transcribed into the new method, except of those of the Hermologion of Balasius, which will confirm this tetrametric structure. So if you did research also on chants which have not been transcribed by the three teachers into the new method.
Yes, of course.
Κύριε Κυριάκο, λέει ναι, ότι έχει κάνει έρευνα και σε τέτοιες περιπτώσεις.
Sorry, please repeat the last phrase.
Yes, so he wanted to ask you whether you have, vrea să vă întrebe dacă ați inclus în cercetările dumneavoastră și cântări care nu au fost exegesite, în afară de Ermologionul lui Balase pe care ne l-ați arătat. Și dacă ați găsit aceeași structură metrică și în acestea.
Yes, I try to make some exegesis to Putna antologias. Chants belonged to Eustathius and other composers from here, and it can be observed this principle. Of course, we need much more research in this direction because it's not so easy to stipulate something which was not said until now, you know, in Byzantine music theory, or at least maybe it was something which was so well known in past, I mean in medieval times, then it didn't need to be written. It was a basic, very basic principle.
You can translate until here, please. Yes, μπορώ να μεταφράσω λίγο ότι έχει κάνει τέτοιες δοκιμές.
Please, if you can, get a little closer to the microphone because we hear you very, very badly. A little closer, if it's possible. Thank you very much.
Now it is better. It is better now.
It's better, of course.
So I will translate now for Mr. Kyriakos. Λέει ότι ναι, έχει κάνει τέτοιες προσπάθειες να κάνει εξηγήσεις στα μέλη του Ευσταθείου του Πρωτοστάτου της Πούτνας και φαίνεται ότι επιβεβαιώνεται αυτό δηλαδή που βρήκε και αναρωτιέται γιατί αυτό δεν αναφέρεται στα παλιά θεωρητικά, ίσως λέει ήταν τόσο αυτονόητο που δεν χρειαζόταν να καταγραφεί. Yes, thank you very much. Is there any other comment from somebody else on this? Well, I would like to make then some short comments on this. I find that it's very precious that Father Avraam digs so deep in this metrical structure. I think, however, that it might be a sort of Systemzwang. We should be careful because ancient Greek metrics have a lot of other formulas except of the 4 beats meter. So one, I think, in order to improve this, and to progress in this very important approach, dear Father, you did, is to look very carefully also at other metrical forms in ancient Greek metrics and also at the work of Simon Karas, because Simon Karas has also developed a very, very interesting approach to meter in the new tradition, and he also observed what you also pointed out, that the basic structure is the 4-time beats. It's the spondeus. This spondeus, which is ta, I must say 1, 2, 3, 4. It's ancient meter for bringing offerings to the gods in the old believings of the Greeks. So it was from antiquity. This meter was a very important meter for holy things, to put it like that in a very simple language. So this is not by coincidence, but it's not the only one. You try to explain it with hypermetric and hypometric forms. Maybe it would be worthwhile to see what's about the peanic meters and some other meters they have in ancient meter theory. And this is the one point. And the other, in order to avoid this notion of Systemzwang, it's in German, it means you want to put a system, a very, patului procost. You want to put everything in these 4-bar meters. I think one should be a bit more elastic. This is my personal opinion on this. Because I saw that all Greeks already from antiquity had elaborated also these cases.
May I answer you a little?
Yeah.
To this, sorry to interrupt you, but we have the words of Chrysanthos. Hieronomia was in the meter 4.
Yes.
From
yes.
the emphasis, no?
Yes, but he says that usually, and this usually does not mean that it's absolute. And then I wanted also to speak about the terminology, since now you are coming with some very precious things, but it's important that this exegesis you presented for the cherubic hymn, according to the traditional terminology, it's called slow exegesis. It is not a short exegesis. This is a slow exegesis.
Where? To which chant? In Papadic chant?
Yes. This is
yes, but the Kievan transnotation, the Kievan exegesis is a little short.
No. It is well. We can.
In these cases.
We can discuss afterwards. What you presented with the exegesis of the 3 teachers, that is all called slow exegesis.
Yes, I agree with this. Yeah.
One has to be very careful with the terminology in order not to make, a confusion there in the musicological society. One has to be very careful about the terminology because it's Arbon Melos already since the 19th century in the theoretical treatises, they call it like that, Arbon Melos, so it's a slow melody. It's Apostolos, Konstas, Chios, and so on. But except of this, it's my comments are just in the surface. Pe un fond de bravo. I want to say that it's an extraordinary work you began to do there, and it's very precious. But I think there are some caveats. So one has to be careful. One, on the terminology, and then on the proper nomination of the thesis, because triangismata is something quite different as it's just too varie. It's not with ligisma and this other things. That was not really true strangisma. And then one has to be very, very careful about this exegesis. And also another comment on the hidden rest. It might exist because there might exist some such a phenomena also in Greek demotic song, in folk music. But in short melodies, if you give it to, for instance, Kimati Thalasis, to a Greek chanter, nobody will put a pause therein. So, I think these very, very precious ideas and paths of searching you have should be also complemented with collaboration with Greek colleagues, which as native speakers can correct us, all of us, about feeling of metrics and also of investigating ancient Greek metrics and also Simon Karas on the metrics in Byzantine chant. And I think then it will be something wonderful because I'm sure you are right with this. And I have here in front of me also Chrysanthos with paragraph 216, which says about this Genos rhythmou dactylikon, eprateto, isto diplun prokelevsmatikon poda, and the diothesis, dioarsis. So I think we are on a very safe ground with these investigations. Mm-hmm. But I think it should be broadened up and it should, of course, be checked back to many things. And I would really invite Kyriakos and maybe some other Greek colleagues to just enter this discussion and help us in order to go a proper path and to avoid some speculation which maybe will have this Systemzwang. I would really like to avoid it. It's, of course, it's a basic principle, but it doesn't fit all the time. Because I remember Nicolaos Angelopoulos singing, the beginning of Enid, and then he recognized fifth meter, 5 beats and 7 beats and so on. And Apostolos Kostas here says the proemion, this beginning of the cherubic song is like a taximi, it's like an improvisation, it's more free. So there are many other things. You can see it, you can push it into 4-meter bars, but you can leave it also more to breathe in a more sensitive way, maybe at the beginning. And then, of course, 90% at least, it's 4 bar meters. I'm sure of that, and I saw it many times. So thank you so much. And again, warm congratulations, because I think it's a very important investigation. And it's a...
Thank you. They are big words for me, from you. Yeah.
But I'm happy that Kyriakos is also here, because he did some beautiful... Kyriakos, would you like, please, to show us some of your endeavors of exegesis? Because Kyriakos published 2 books with Ode Anastassimataria. One of them is by Daniel the Protopsaltis from the time of Peter Lampadarios, which have not been transcribed yet into the new method. So he did a very bold attempt in this sense. So, κύριε Κυριάκο, θέλετε να μας δείξετε έτσι λίγο κάτι, έτσι πολύ σύντομο από αυτή την παρουσίαση που είχατε κάνει? Πολύ σύντομο.
Για τα σηματάρια λέτε ή για τις δοξολογίες?
Ένα που έχετε μια θέση, θυμάμαι τώρα, θέση ουρανίσματος, μια θέση, αν θέλετε.
Ναι. Να κάνω share screen,
Κάντε share screen.
Ευχαριστώ. Φαίνεται τώρα?
Φαίνεται, we can see it.
Εντάξει, άμα να πω πολύ σύντομα, να μην κουράσω τα υπόλοιπα μέλη, ότι εδώ είναι από τις δοξολογίες της ανεξήγητες του Κοσμά του Ιβυρίτη.
This is Cosmas from Iviron, or the so-called Cosmas the Macedonian, from the 17th century, second half, and it's from doxologies.
Και μια βασική, έτσι, ας πούμε, επισήμανση που έχω κάνει, τουλάχιστον για τα μέλη αυτά του 17ου, 10ου ίσως 8ου αιώνα, είναι ενώ της περίοδου της εξηγητικής σημειογραφίας, είναι ότι υπάρχει μια διτή παρασήμανση θέσεων. Ο ένας τρόπος είναι ο πιο συνοπτικός και ο πιο παλαιός, και ο δεύτερος τρόπος είναι λίγο αναλυτικότερος. Και αυτό γίνεται προκειμένου με τον αναλυτικότερο τρόπο να προσδιοριστεί η ερμηνεία και να μην παρασυρθούμε από το συνοπτικό τρόπο και δώσουμε αργή ερμηνεία σε μέλη όπως τις δοξολογίες ή κάποιο στοιχειρό ή καταβασίες.
So he says that there is, in the 17th century, one can observe 2 ways of writing out the thesis, the formulas. The one is the more synoptic one, more stenographic one, and the other is the more analytic one. And they both occur in the same doxology, for instance. And he says that this prevents, this more analytic way of writing them down prevents people to make slow exegesis for the doxology. Αυτό είναι ένα παράδειγμα τέτοιο, δηλαδή εκεί θέλετε να μας το ψέρνετε λίγο?
Το δεύτερο παράδειγμα εδώ, η ανανθρώπιση ευδοκία, ουσιαστικά είναι μια σύντομη ερμηνεία αυτής της παλαιάς θέσης, η οποία, αν τη δούμε στο αναστοιχειαρικό μέλος του Χρυσάφη ή κάποιο άλλο της εποχής, θα είχαμε μια αργή εξήγηση από τους δασκάλους, και εδώ μας δίνεται σε σύντομο χρόνο. Έτσι, είναι, για κάθε συλλαβή ουσιαστικά είναι 2, 4, 6, 8 χρόνιες, όπως βλέπουμε.
So he said that this του αιώνος, αιώνα του αιώνος, this which is in the green circle, has to last 8 beats, and beneath you see a more exegetic form of writing the same cadence. Can you sing it for us? Θέλετε να μας το ξέρετε?
Ναι, είναι σε πλάγιο σε δεύτερο ήχο. Όταν δούμε τη συνοπτική γραφή, μπορούμε να πούμε, αν μου επιτρέπετε, έχουμε την άδεια εντός εισαγωγικών, ή επιτρέπεται να το ερμηνεύσουμε με διάφορους τρόπους, όχι πάρα πολλούς, αλλά με διάφορες έτσι ποικιλματικές αλλαγές. Όταν όμως έχουμε προσδιοριστικά την αναλυτική γραφή, πρέπει να το ερμηνεύσουμε απλά, έτσι, και να το μεταγράψουμε με απλό τρόπο. Οπότε εδώ σε αυτήν την περίπτωση και εις τον αιώνα του αιώνος, ή θα μπορούσε να ήταν του αιώνος. Και μια δεύτερη εξίσου εξήγηση από τους δασκάλους τους τρεις είναι εις τον αιώνα του αιώνος. Η ίδια θέση είναι και εδώ, απλώς την καταγράφει αναλυτικά. Εν ανθρώπης ευδοκία, ευδοκία. Εδώ μπορεί να κάνεις διάφορα. Απλώς η μεταγραφή πρέπει να είναι λίγο κλασικής μορφής και μπορεί να την αποδώσει με διάφορους τρόπους. Αυτό, μην σας κουράσω άλλο τώρα.
Ναι, πολύ ωραία. So he argues for different the possibilities to make the exegesis here at this formula. Yes, so this is highly interesting. Thank you so much. Ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ. Ίσως άλλη φορά θα έχουμε και τη δυνατότητα να δείξουμε και άλλα παραδείγματα, έτσι, επειδή τώρα θα βγούμε λίγο εκτός προγράμματος άμα το συνεχίσουμε. Αλλά έχει πολύ μεγάλο ενδιαφέρον. So this is very interesting and it would be great that Mr. Kyriakos can collaborate with Father Avraam, and so this would be great because then we can have in Putna also a check of a native speaker about the feeling about meters and pulses and all this stuff. So I'm very happy. Χαίρομαι πάρα πολύ που μπορούσατε να συνδεθείτε και μακάρι να μπορέσετε να συνεργαστείτε με τον πατέρα Αβραάμ σαν Έλληνας, δηλαδή που είναι η μητρική σας γλώσσα, για την αίσθηση του μέτρου που έχετε εσείς και που μπορεί ένας ξένος έτσι να υποθέσει ότι μπορεί να έχει ελληνική γλώσσα. Έτσι. Ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ. So we are very happy about this new collaboration. Let's hope.